What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Speakeasy Brewer. Today we have a very fun live stream. At least I think it's fun just because I get to drink beer and create a beer recipe. But we have a little bit to go through today. So if you're new to the channel and you're interested in beer, anything to do with beer, whether it's a beer review slash tasting, beer creation, like recipe building, or just want to see what brew day looks like, this is the channel for you. At some point, we will also be going over like what it looks like to actually get going with home brewing in your own house. What sort of equipment do you need? Um, what sort of ingredients are you going to look for? What does it look like to actually work with a kit? And then going from a kit to all grain, which is normally what we do. This is a place for you. We also will be, you'll if you like this channel and you like beer in general, you get to watch me go through homebrew, or from home brewer to pro brewer. That's the goal anyways. But anyways, today I just want to say welcome. I see there's 3 of you all on here. Welcome. We're going to start today off with a beer review. So for those of you who haven't been on the channel for very long, or this might be your first time, one of my followers is named Dr. Hoppenstein, and he is a pro brewer out in Monticello, Indiana. I got a chance to actually go brew with him at his brewery, and he gave me some of his beers to bring home. So we're actually going to be trying one of his beers. I don't think I'll do both, but there's a chance I might switch into both. Hey, what's up, Dr. Hoppenstein? Today we're tasting your beers, so I'm excited to check it out. Um, Anyways, so today the beer we're going to review and taste is the wheat wine. And I have to say, I didn't even know wheat wine was a style of beer. I knew barley wine. Hey, what's up, Bentorius? Welcome, man. Thanks again for the follow. And yeah, I got a chance to jump on one of your streams or watch one of your old streams, and I love what your channel does. It's awesome. Beer nerds unite. Thanks for jumping on. So yeah, wheat wine. That's what we're going to be having today. And I kind of going to split that review up into 2 parts. So don't get too nervous, Dr. Hoppenstein. Although all the beers that I've ever had that Dr. Hoppenstein made when I was out with him, they're all freaking amazing. So I'm imagining this is going to be amazing as well. But I have it broken down into several categories, and I'll get into that once we actually get into the tasting. Rubella is going to join us in the tasting as well, because I saved those bottles to share with her, because she was really bummed that she couldn't come with me to Indiana and check things out. But today we'll get a chance to do it. So yes, we're going to do the beer review, and then we're going to work on our actual beer recipe for the next beer we do. And for those of you who are new to my channel, or are considering being new to the channel, I do have a Discord. Please jump on, and we just talk everything beer and just talk about life in general. But I have it scheduled, I think, for the 28th, 29th. Anyways, it's on there. Don't worry, I'll brew on the day that it says on the event. But we're actually going to be brewing that beer. I want to say it's like the 28th or 29th of January. So that's coming up here shortly. But anyways, before we get into the beer recipe, let's do this beer review. Amy, would you like to join? I also got a really sweet bottle opener. Copacetic Beer Factory, union member. This is from Dr. Hop's brewery. So, and this is Brubella.
Where do I sit?
Here. Sorry. Here, just bring that over. All right. So this is Brubella, my beloved wife, and she's going to be joining me today. So I'm all excited because here we are, the wheat wine. I don't know, did you actually have a name for this, Dr. Hop? I saw Merkelese, and we have the other one, which is a Merkelese Imperial Stout Barrel Aged, which I'm kind of tempted to try that one as well. But we even got a signature. Woo!
Don't reveal his name.
Lucky. Anyways, so today's our wheat wine. I guess before we get into that, I want to go over what to expect with a wheat wine, because I don't even know what to expect. Again, like I said, it's the first time I've ever thought of a wheat wine in general. So we're going to look at the Beer Judge Certification Manual real fast. I'm going to read through it, and then we're going to try it. Okay. And so for those of you who've never heard of or used the beer judge certification manual, they say at the very, very beginning that it's not an end all be all sort of thing, and that some of the beers, uh, the Holy Mater, Holomater or Holy Mater, I like it.
Holomador.
Oh, Holomador. Thank you. Sorry, it is Holomador.
We have a baby sleeping in the
Yeah.
background. Hopefully, it
So
doesn't get too loud.
he's probably gonna wake up and be
too
here.
excited.
Anyways, so for wheat wine, anyways, going back
Hi,
to
Swine Hunter.
yeah, and for those of you who are just jumping on, just be ready. We're going to be doing a beer review as well as a beer build. So just be ready. Um, anyways, so wheat wine again with the beer judge certification manual. Hold on one second. I'm going to pull it up so you guys can all see as well. Oops. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go to page 60. Okay, so we have a wheat wine. And the beer judge certification, I think this falls under strong American ale, and it's under the identifier of 22D. And we got our wheat wine, okay? Again, with this manual, this is for competition only. And at the very beginning of this, it says these are guidelines. And for home brewing or even professional brewing, the most important thing about brewing beer, at least for me, and I think Dr. Oppenstein would agree, is the creativity, the innovation, and just the experimentation. Have fun. So if I'm going to enter a competition and do like a technical beer, this is where I go to figure out like what my beer is going to look like. And actually, any beer that I'm going to do, I come here as like a first kind of like foundation, especially if it's a beer I've never done before. And I sit here and I go, okay, what kind of a beer is this? What am I trying to look for an overall style and appearance and that kind of thing? So this is where I go to. But again, it's just guidelines only. And so for what we're going to go over today, when we do the beer review, we're gonna review it two different ways. We're gonna review it one for personal like enjoyment and like what I would score under each of the categories I've created, and then the other category will be judging it based on the beer judge certification manual. Yeah, you guys are looking at my screen. I should say. Um, was wheat famine in Ukraine, I believe, was designed and brewed with a customer of mine before he went overseas on a tour. I also barrel aged some of it for the duration of this tour. Not sure if that is barrel aged or not. Haha, military tour that is. Okay, cool. So this is just a background that Dr. Hoppenstein told me about with this wheat wine. So super cool. I love that. It has a great story. And I think with what Dr. Hoppenstein's sharing too is another thing is not only is like home brewing and just brewing in general, like just so much fun to create and innovate and experiment. But I think the other part of it is to have a story behind it. And as you can tell with what Dr. Oppenstein shared with us, is this is a story-driven beer, and it has meaning behind it. So I think that's super cool. So, um, anyways, okay. So for wheat wine, just real quick for overall impression. Again, this is for me, just kind of I have no idea what a wheat wine is, so this is for me to learn. So it says overall impression. Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
So overall impression. I'm just right here so you can see. Oh heavens to Betsy! I should stop dealing with computers. Okay, a richly textured, high alcohol sipping beer with a significantly grainy, bready flavor and a sleek body. The emphasis is first on the bready, weedy flavor with malt, hops, fruity yeast, and alcohol complexity.
I'm excited.
I know, me too.
Delicious.
It does sound really good. So the hop aroma is mild and can represent just about any hop variety, moderate to moderately strong bready, weedy malt character, often with additional malt complexity such as honey and caramel. A light, clean alcohol aroma may be noted. Low to medium fruity notes may be apparent. Very low diacetyl option, banana and clove Weizen yeast character is inappropriate.
Oh, good. I do not like bananas.
Okay. Appearance. Color ranging from gold to deep amber, often with garnet or ruby highlights. Low to medium off-white head. The head may have creamy texture and good retention. Chill haze is allowable, but usually clears up as the beer gets warmer. High alcohol and viscosity may be visible as legs. Interesting. Well, I
Do we
guess,
know
you
what
know,
the
think about wine and you like swirl around, you could see the alcohol legs. So,
Mhm.
so far I'm thinking this is going to be pretty hefty on the alcohol. um, Flavor. So the moderate to moderately high bready wheat malt flavor, dominant in the flavor balance over hop character. Low to moderate toasty, caramel, biscuity, or honey malt notes can add a welcome complexity, but are not required. Low to medium hop flavor, reflecting any variety. Moderate to moderately high fruitiness, often with a dried fruit character. Low to moderate bitterness, creating a malty to even balance. Should not be syrupy or under attenuated. So for the mouthfeel, medium, full to full body, chewy, often with a luscious, velvety texture, low to moderate carbonation, light to moderate smooth alcohol, warmth is optional. So for those of you who are probably new to the channel, I do kind of go over a little bit of the mouthfeel. Like during brew day, we talk about medium body to full body. So I'll explain that on brew day. So if you're interested in that, just follow along. We'll talk about that later on. But based on what I'm thinking, it's going to be pretty sweet also. And then just a few things. So characteristic in I don't need to go over all that stuff. Anyways, so vital statistics. So the color is ranging between 6 and 14. So that's the gold to like amber ruby color. Alcohol by volume, there it is right there, 8 to 12%.
Wow.
And then bitterness units, 30 to 60. Okay, so that's what we're looking at with this amazing beer. So let's see. So the alcohol, he says between 10 and 11%, brewed over just a year ago. Fairly confident it's not barrel aged. There won't be any question if it is, though. Well, we're going to
We'll
pop
know.
open that here shortly. So what we'll do is we'll pop it open, we'll pour it, take an initial kind of like a look at it, smell, taste, and then we're going to break it down over here. Okay, so let's use our copacetic beer opener, and I love it. I love it. I don't want to smell it yet. I want to wait. So here we go. In my speakeasy glass. Oh, look at that. There's our nice dark, I guess that's more of a golden color. So yeah, so it's on the lighter end. Speakeasy brewer. But yeah, looks beautiful. It's definitely not barrel aged, so you don't need to worry about that. Although that does sound amazing. To me, I can smell the maltiness, and there's some fruitiness to it actually, and it smells like it'll be sweet. And I would say that
Losing its head already.
yeah, I can say already that the alcohol probably it doesn't smell alcoholy, which is nice. So to me, it sounds like when it talks about it being like a sipping beer, you know, you think about like a whiskey, like you could shoot it if you want, but if you really want to enjoy a good whiskey, like you sip it and you want to enjoy the flavor and the aroma. And this one, I think it would be a good one. It definitely has kind of like a, I don't know, it's kind of got a Belgium-y feel to me, just like, you know, kind of like a, I imagine it being like kind of hefty and chewy would be the word, full body and sweet, malty, and maybe a little bit of syrupiness, I think, but I don't know. Here, mm, wow.
Hmm.
Actually, I think there might be some. I think there might be a little bit of barrel age in there,
Hmm.
maybe, which is interesting because I didn't quite smell it, but I can taste. Actually, no, I don't know.
To
Do you
me,
taste that?
there's a bitterness to it. There's a weediness.
You know what?
Um,
Yeah, I think you're right.
I,
It's
I
not oak.
wouldn't call it
It's not
syrupy.
barrel aged. It's not syrupy at
It's
all,
not
by the way.
syrupy.
Yeah, so this one in particular, so what I thought was barrel aged, I think Amy picked it up. It's bitter, which we expect it to be bitter, right? Mild to high bitterness. And I think the bitterness plus the sweetness and the maltiness kind of gives it that kind of oaky. That's the alcohol. Remember?
It says there's vanilla. I was gonna say it
Yep.
said clove and banana were not acceptable. It had some sort of
Taste.
additional
Ah,
foodie aroma to it, so maybe that's the
okay. Second use.
vanilla,
Yeah, and maybe that's
like a
why I thought it
spice
was.
of some sort.
Maybe that's why I thought it was like barrel aged, just because I had that vanilla flavor.
I do imagine I'm sitting in Europe somewhere with
Yeah,
this one.
yeah,
Yes.
it's great. Really like it. It's very
Mm-hmm.
pleasant, and it's definitely like a sipping beer, and I really, really enjoy it. I wish I was sipping this with you though, Dr. Hop and Swine Hunter too.
Would you drink that one again after you drank it, or would you go get a
Yes,
different beer?
I would drink this again.
Well, it's 10%. I wouldn't,
Yeah.
but for flavor, it's really good. Although I think for people who don't like bitterness, it's kind of high on the bitter.
Mm.
What was the?
It's,
Is it?
I don't know if it's super high. Um, so just I'm gonna look at my other screen real quickly in terms of like,
It's lingering.
yeah, it's a lingering. Let's see. Yep, it says moderate to moderately high bready wheat malt flavor, dominant in the flavor balance over any hop character. Low to moderate toasty, caramel, biscuity, or honey malt notes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I definitely taste the caramel. I don't really necessarily taste toasty, but I taste caramel, biscuity. I don't know if I taste um, honey as much, but the vanilla definitely comes out.
Mm-hmm.
I can taste like some dried fruit, or that one, moderately high fruitiness. So I did say that it was there was some fruitiness to it, at least in the aroma. So
This is flavor, but up here aroma says low to medium fruity.
yeah, and I did smell that. Yeah. Anyways, I really like it, and it does have a
It
little
is
bit of
good.
a haze, but I would be interested because it does say that as it warms up, the haze kind of disappears, so it's a chill haze. Um, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
Yeah, good.
yeah. Okay, cool. So let me show you guys what we're gonna do next. So we're gonna swap things around so I can show you my board. I think you're okay. Let me just arrange things around. Okay, and I'm gonna show you guys what we're looking at. Okay. Do we know the grain bill or hop editions of this? That's a good question, Ventorius. That would be a question for Dr. Hoppenstein. Dr. Hop, if you want to share that, um, I'll leave that up to you. Um, but I'd be interested as well. Okay, so what we have here, I don't know if you guys can see it. Can you guys see it okay? Um, let's see here. There we go. There we go. Can you guys read that? Yeah. Okay. Just curious. No need to share recipe. Yeah. I think those are good questions. I would. Yeah. I'd be curious to. More importantly, I'd be curious to see what hops you used. To me, if I were to put a guess on it, I I can't guess. I'm horrible at figuring out hops, but I'm gonna figure that out eventually. Like I'll be able to pick those out. I'm hoping. Okay. So here we have the categories that I want to review this with, okay? And we're going to review it 1 through 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Um, and we have it broken down to beer judge certification sort of categories. We have aroma, we have appearance, flavor, mouthfeel, and just overall impression, okay? And we're just going to, we're going to go based off of beer judge certification level guidelines, and then I'm going to have my personal right here, and then we'll kind of give it a full on review at the end. Um, so remember, with the we'll start with the top. Okay, so we have aroma. Okay, so aroma, remember, is hop. Aroma is mild and can represent just about any hop variety. Moderate to moderately strong bready, weedy malt character, often with additional malt complexity, such as honey and caramel. A light, clean alcohol aroma may be noted. Low to medium fruity notes may be apparent. Very low diacetyl option. Banana and clove, Weizen yeast characters inappropriate. So if I were to go off of this, just aroma, I'm getting a fruitiness.
I got fruity,
Yeah,
but it's not overpowering.
it's not overpowering,
It's
and
not like a hazy IPA.
yeah, and I don't think, yeah, and it's not necessarily
Mm.
hoppy. It's you get a hop aroma to it, um, which sorry, I know that you can't really
I
see
would say
much
honey.
of what's happening. Yeah,
Honey, a little sweet.
yeah, I would definitely say it's sweet too. Well, yeah, the fruitiness would usually makes it sweet. And I think I said at one point that it was I said it was going to be something like Belgium. I don't know if you like do Belgium barrel aged beers. Like when you drink that, you think I said it was going to be syrupy, and I think that's that sweetness that I was looking at. I don't necessarily smell the honey, but definitely the bready. I mean, a lot of beer is bready, but this one, I think the breadiness is pretty light. The
Mhm.
hoppiness is present, but it's not overpowering, and I think just the sweetness and the fruitiness is there. Um, yeah. So let's just. I'm gonna look at this real quickly. I'm gonna put you back on camera too, because we're gonna be spending more time over there here in a second. Okay, so hop aroma is mild and can represent just about any hop. So yeah, it's mild. I think it's
That
definitely there. Moderate to moderately strong bready, weedy malt character. I
I
would
think
say that's
could be
good.
stronger
Yeah,
in aroma.
an aroma for the maltiness. You mean?
Yep, the bready weedy.
Yeah, I would say yeah,
It's there, but I think it's more citrusy than bready.
yeah, citrusy, fruity. I can
Oh,
definitely
sorry,
smell the
fruity, not
sweetness.
citrusy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. And this is me. This is me being like I am not a beer judge, by the way. So prerequisite there. Um, so I'm gonna do both
It does
of
have a
these at the
little
same
sweet
time.
caramel,
Yeah,
light clean alcohol aroma, maybe.
yeah. I definitely. It's weird. It's like I smelling it and making me think of like those barrel aged beers, even though it doesn't have like the oaky vanilla flavor. Um, it definitely made me think that it was going to be high in alcohol. Maybe it was also the giveaway that it's a wheat wine. Um, so I think if I were to go off of this, basically beer judge certification and probably my own personal one too, um, I'm gonna give it a 4 based on what it meets in the criteria. I think what I feel like would make it a 5, at least for me. And again, I think it's probably again maybe there's a little bit of bias here. I would probably do 4.5 honestly, but I feel like I don't want to be too biased and be like, yeah, it's Dr. Hub Spears. It's 5 across the board, because I really want to do that. Um, but I think, uh, yeah, in terms of like what I would see to make it like a full 5 is probably more of the breadiness and weediness. I think that's what Rubella pointed out. And but overall, it's quite pleasant. Um, anyways, so there's that. Okay, next is
Appearance.
appearance. You want to read it off?
Color ranging from gold to deep amber, often with garnet or ruby highlights.
Okay, yeah. So I'd say
Ooh.
that's
Say
pretty
that's
much gold.
amber for sure. Gold.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
gold, like dark gold to amber. Yeah,
Okay, low to medium, off-white head,
which it did have
does
that.
have a wheat,
Yep,
low head, right?
yep.
Head maybe have a creamy texture. It was not as creamy
I would
as
say
like a
that
nitro, of course.
yeah, the head, yeah, it wasn't super. It didn't last very long,
No, and it says and good retention.
which is kind of interesting because I feel like because like when you're wanting head retention, you would use grains like carafoam. I guess. Well, I mean, there is a little bit of there is still a head, so it's retention, which makes sense because it's a wheat. It's just not a tall like uh what's the word I'm trying to use like it's persistent. It's there, but it's not like covering the whole thing. But it's there. I mean, when you're wanting to have head on your beer, you would add wheat um, or like carafoam to it for head retention. Um, and so I mean, it's there. It's definitely been sitting there, stirred up a little bit. It's got that light head. I think it meets that criteria in my opinion,
Chill haze is allowable.
which it does have.
Yep.
Yep, chill haze is
It
allowable.
beer up as various forms.
Yep.
High alcohol and viscosity may be visible as legs. Do you see legs?
Um, no, but it says it may be visible. It's not like a necessary.
Yeah.
I think overall, I again, this is just I don't know. I don't. I think sometimes I'm either biased or I I don't know what I'm talking about because again, one of the things I think that I'd like to see more of is like sometimes it's fun to have that head there, but it's there. It's just around the rim. So I'm gonna I think it meets all the criteria honestly. I'm gonna just do it. I think this deserves a 5 honestly because it meets all the criteria. Um, and so there's that. And the head is still there, as you guys can see. It's light, but it's there. Um, and honestly, it's kind of funny because I feel like as I'm going through all these things, um, I'm also trying to do my own personal. And I think maybe that's the other thing too, is my own personal thing is coming out in both. I probably could have just done beer judge certification or personal, and it would have pretty much been
Well,
the same.
I mean, for you, if you said personally you want it to be more heady, perhaps than the
It,
BO4 or something like
yeah,
that. Or
I
you personally want it to be more amber,
I
but
I
if
mean from
it meets the criteria.
I mean every time I take a sip, the head just kind of gets stirred up again. I kind of like that, and that's what you want in a beer, right? It's not like a pilsner or like a Kolsch or something where you want the head to like be retained fully. Okay, let's go to flavor.
Moderate to moderately high bready wheat malt flavor.
Okay, moderate to moderately high bready wheat malt flavor, dominant with
Dominant in the
flavor
flavor
balance.
balance over any hop
I
character.
would agree to that. I think I don't taste any like hop character. I don't know if you guys, if I'm too close to the screen, but um, a hop character. I think the only character in terms of hop that I get is just like the bitterness on the back of my tongue, which is good, right? I don't smell like super high like hop characteristic notes when I smell. I just smell a little bit of hop aroma and then the bitterness on the back of my tongue, which earlier I kind of confused that with, remember I said barrel aged, but I think it's just because there's that sweetness, that carameliness, and then there's that bitterness that kind of balances each other out. But for whatever reason, I think the bitterness itself caused me to think that. Anyways, okay, so yeah,
So what about the first time? Moderate to moderately high bready wheat malt flavor. You already said.
yeah. I mean, it's
That was
there for
there.
sure.
Okay.
The moderate to moderately high bready.
Low to moderate toasty, caramel, biscuity, or honey malt.
Yep.
And add a welcome complexity. I feel
Yep.
like it has a little bit of that.
Yeah. I definitely taste the honey a little bit more.
Well,
Caramel for sure. Honey. I don't taste any toastiness, but I do taste the biscuitiness, which is quite nice.
low to medium hop flavor, reflecting any variety.
Yep. So loaded.
Moderate,
Yeah, I'd say that's good.
moderate to moderately high fruitiness.
Yeah, I'd say moderate fruitiness.
Optimum dried fruit character. Low to moderate bitterness,
Not a moderate. Yeah.
creating a malty to even balance.
I don't know if you guys can hear her, but
Should not be syrupy or underextended.
it's okay. Yeah. I like this. I think it meets all of it. I think I'm gonna give this one a 4, and I again I think it's going along the lines. I think it has a little bit of syrupiness. Honestly, I don't know what if you would agree with that, Amy, or not.
I don't think it's syrupy.
You don't think it's
I do
syrupy?
think it's
Could be
moderate
my own thing.
bitterness.
The bitterness.
Yeah.
It could be the bitterness that's making me think it's kind of syrupy. But
Or
yeah.
sometimes syrupy dried fruit.
See, I'm
like
not a judge. This is why I'm not a judge because I don't even know. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the sweetness and the maltiness together makes it feel a little syrupy, but it's not syrupy. That's the other thing too. Is it's like I think syrupy is more of like I think
like
it's
a double imperial ale
yeah,
or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm redundant.
yeah.
Say double imperial.
I don't know. To me, it tastes syrupy, but the mouthfeel isn't syrupy. If
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that could be
Yeah, I
just
get
my
that.
own. That might be
Like-
my own like mess up. But I don't know.
Right. It tastes syrupy.
Tastes
It's
syrupy.
not hefty.
It's not
In
hefty.
the mouth.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. Which brings us to mouthfeel.
Yeah.
I think mouthfeel is medium full to full body, chewy, often with a luscious, velvety texture, low to moderate carbonation, which, yes, it's got low to moderate carbonation for sure, probably on the lower end. Light to moderate smooth alcohol with warmth, optional. I don't necessarily taste the alcohol, and I don't know if I would necessarily call it chewy. I would definitely call it full body, but not chewy. Um, and I also would say, I don't know. Do you think it has a velvety texture? I don't. To me it seems pretty clean. I wouldn't call it crisp like a pilsner or anything, but I call it clean, so not velvety.
So maybe it falls a little short of medium full.
Yeah, probably medium full rather than a full body. But I think, but I mean, sometimes with the velvety texture and lusciousness, I don't necessarily think that would be. I don't know if that's part of the body. Well, I guess it is part of the body, isn't it? Because I think a body is being like the complexity of the, I mean, gosh, I'm sounding like a ding dong. It's like the complexity of the beers. I'm thinking of like the flavors, the sweetness, the toastiness, the crispness, the dryness, that sort of thing, versus or like kind of wet. So sometimes sweet beers kind of wet your palate a little bit more. They seem to last a little bit. And maybe that would fall under luscious, but I'm not quite sure. I feel like this is what
I
I'm,
agree on this one, but it does have moderate
yeah.
carbonation.
I honestly think that it meets pretty much, yeah, I think it meets most everything. I think what would make this a five is if it was a little bit more velvety in the texture. Um, Something that lasts a little bit. I think the hoppiness, and it could be the hoppiness. I think the sweetness kind of fades, which I think if you have the velvety texture, it causes the sweetness to last a little bit. But the sweetness kind of goes, and then it gets replaced by the hops, which to me kind of makes it not as velvety. But I still think it's very pleasant. So this is my personal.
Oh,
That's my personal score on this one. Yeah, I'm sorry, we're coming back. Okay. Oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch of stuff on here. Sorry. Okay. So Dr. Oppenstein says 50% base malt, 35% white wheat, 10% flaked wheat, 5 Cara wheat, 45 Lava Bond. Hops is an Amarillo 60 and 10 edition. Um, Original gravity is 1.095. Yeah, so it's hefty. IBU 72. So yeah, it's pretty high on the bitterness. Fermented with White Lab high gravity Belgian. Called the Belgian. I did say it tastes like a Belgian beer. I feel pretty happy with that. Customer basically wanted an imperial Heffa, so we compromised. I like it.
nice.
That's the ish recipe.
Nice. Love it.
Interesting. I'm brewing
Dry hopped American wheat when I returned from Thailand early February. Never really used that
sweet.
before.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, awesome. Well, very cool. I love all that stuff, and thanks for sharing that grain bill too. It's pretty impressive. Like I'm really happy that there's certain things that I was able to pull out, like the Belgian. I did say that, didn't I? I said like a Belgian style beer, which that's where I was like, oh, it's kind of syrupy in general. So that's what's surprising is I anticipated it to be syrupy, and it wasn't syrupy at all. But I think also what makes it syrupy is that velvety texture,
I know. It's like, how
lusciousness.
do they get that chewiness without it being
Yeah,
syrupy?
yeah,
That sounds like a challenge.
yeah. So actually, I mean, with what Dr. Oppenstein said, he says the
Yeah.
ish recipe. Um, would you call it the? I don't know if he should.
Yeah.
Did he say?
The name at the beginning, right above this one.
Yeah.
Sounds like something I would say.
Uh,
Hall in the door.
yeah, Hall in the Door. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so I would say just the overall impression. I mean, it's pretty good. I really like the aroma. I think the aroma is pleasant, and it's kind of a tricky aroma, honestly. The appearance is beautiful. I think it's great, and it does have that low to medium carbonation, which I think is right on. The flavor, I think, is pretty right on. I think we said there was something that was missing on the flavor.
I would say a little more bready or meaty.
Oh yeah. I think that's what we're looking for is just a little bit more breadiness.
Moderate to moderate high bready
Yeah,
malt flavor.
a little bit more breadiness, and then the mouthfeel. I think we gave it a 4 because of the just the lack of the velvetiness. But I think the overall impression, give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's really good, and I think for my own personal thing, I do 4.5 out of 5 just because I find it very pleasant. It's something I would definitely drink again. It is a hefty beer, so I think if you were to drink one of these, um, it would be like buy one now and drink it in the pub, and then take the other one home. Or you just hang out for a long period of time, and you just enjoy a couple of beers, and make sure you have a meal in between. Because yeah, if it's between 10 and 11%, that's a hefty beer. So I think overall, that's what I would do. Um, I feel like with the beer judge certification, I was trying to be a little bit more like restrictive. I don't know. I'd be curious to see like what an actual judge would say about the particular beer, because obviously I'm not a judge, and there's a lot of things that I don't get from that, and so I need to do the judge. And I guess Dr. Hop, you are a certified judge, so I'd be curious to see what your um, thoughts are on any of these. If Yeah, I'm just curious. But yeah, if you would agree. But again, just like one of the things that I said earlier, it's just like when you're using the manual, it talks about it being like this isn't a cut and dry thing. It's more for competition only. And I think that's why, like, if I were to put it under a competition, I'd be a little bit more strict on it. But on my own personal one, it's pretty in line with what I would give and rate it otherwise. But yeah, I think it's an overall great beer. So I really appreciate you letting me try it, and I think it's great. And I see you answer. It's only bounce back here, biased, but thank you very much. The beer score a 74 at the Indiana Brewers Cup last year. Dude, that's amazing. That's right on. Well, I would say if I were, I mean, that's pretty close, right? I don't even know. Maybe 4.5 would make it a 70% or 80%. That's pretty close. Um, it's a great beer, dude. It's a great beer. I feel like I have a lot to learn still, and so I'm gonna be picking your brain a lot more. Um, so yeah. Anyways, so that was my first wheat wine. So yeah, I'm no longer a wheat wine virgin. uh, Anyways, okay, so that's our beer review. I'm gonna keep drinking this, but let's get into the big thing, which is the beer recipe build. That's like our big focus point for today. I just wanted to make sure I tried one of Dr. Hop's beers, and then I think I'll probably try the other one on brew day, which will be the Mercules Imperial Stout. So we'll probably do something similar to that if you guys are up for it, because we'll have some time during brew day. Brew day's kind of one of those slow ones. Southern Tier and Boulevard Brewing make killer wheat wines. I just bought a Boulevard yesterday. It was a barrel Tank 7 Saison. So I'm excited to try that. Yeah, it's awesome. Cool. All right. Well, there's that. Let's get to the meat and potatoes now.
Oh,
Meat.
that was kind of medium
I,
already.
I know, right? I know. I kind of like that. It's kind of fun to break down like beer reviews in that sense. But I think this is when I do beer reviews, I think I'm gonna have to play around with this a little bit more. And honestly, I might become a beer judge. Like, I think that's one of the things that would help me be better at brewing, first of all, and second of all, like
Yeah, it's all
give
practice right now, right?
give fair, yeah, give fair um, reviews. Okay, let me just make sure I mark down what I'm doing. All right, so now we're going to get into the seasonal beer um, side of things, and so let's see. Sorry, I just want to say, Robert, to these, yeah, dude, Boulevard beer is quite pleasant. Kansas City, I believe, right? Yeah, Kansas City. Anyways, that's where they're at. Tank 7 is top notch. Well, I don't ruin it for me. I haven't tried it, so I might have to do a beer review of that one. I've heard nothing but good things about Tank 7. So, and you're saison, dude, from what I understand, since you told me to do the Burning Sock saison, which was yummy. I have to redo that one and see if I can make it better than I did last time. But overall, yeah. But otherwise, it's great to see you, Rob. Thanks for jumping on. Sister lived in KC for a few years. I love their small batch beers for sure. Totally. Yeah. I Small batch is great because then you can play around with things a little bit more. Okay, cool. All right, so we are gonna do, and I know this is super. Well, it's not necessarily super out of season. I'm gonna call it my. It's gonna be a winter seasonal beer because we're still in winter, but it's also gonna be my replacement for holiday beer because I did not get to do much in terms of holiday brewing. Just because of the child. So that took most of my time, and then we had family in town, all this other stuff. But now we're catching up. So we did our pumpkin oatmeal stout last stream, which is in fermentation now. It's done fermenting, so I'm just letting it have like a diacetyl rest right now. I'll be bottling it next week. And then we'll be able to taste it probably also on the same day that we do the Mercules um, tasting as well. And we're going to be brewing this beer. So, yeah, so let me come over here and I'm going to show you guys kind of what I've got. I don't have a recipe going, but I want to go over the beer judge certification manual just because I've never done a winter beer. So we're going to look at that again. All right, so let me share my screen with y'all. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the system that I use. I use Beersmith 3, um, and it does everything for you. So you can set it up for the equipment that you've got. It gives you, based on the beer judge certification sort of limits or guidelines, it has these sliders. If it's in the green, it's good. If it's in the yellow, it's kind of borderline on style. And then if it's in the red, it's not on style. Now, I don't plan on this beer being necessarily on style. So if it happens to be on style, that's purely accidental. But first, we like to do, so I'm going to do a winter seasonal beer. So I like to always come here because I've never done a winter seasonal beer. And it kind of gives me a good idea of what I'm looking for. Okay, so um, it can get pretty high on the alcohol. So alcohol is a max of 10% and the minimum of 5%. Don't think I'm going to do a 10 or a 5. I'll probably fall right in between at like a 6%, give or take. But look at the color. I mean, it's pretty high in the color. You look at the top right corner here, and it's basically black or just opaque and dark. And I don't necessarily think that I want it to be that dark either. So I think we're going to be right in between. I kind of want to look for like a coppery color in this particular beer. Um, and it falls under a spiced beer category. And I am going to be using some spices, and we'll talk about which spices I'm using and why. And I might either add or take away some just depending, because I've been thinking about this for a while. But you look at the description, and winter seasonal beers are beers that suggest cold weather and Christmas holiday season. May include holiday spices, specialty sugar, and other products that are reminiscent of the festive season. A stronger, darker spiced beer that often has a rich body and warming finish suggests a good accompaniment to cold winter seasons. Using the sensory profile of products that suggest holiday seasons, such as Christmas cookies, gingerbread, English type Christmas pudding, rum cakes, eggnog, evergreen trees, potpourri, or mulling spice, balanced with a supportive, often malty, warming, and darker base beer. The description of the beer is critical for evaluation. So there's that. So aroma, we're looking at, this is just overall profile, malty, spicy, fruity, and balanced. A wide range is possible as long as it evokes the holiday theme. The declared ingredients and concepts set for expectation. Fruity is often dark or dried in character. Hops are often subtle. Alcohol is often present but smooth and supportive. Malty and sugary aromas tend to be greater in the balance and support the spices. The components should be well integrated and create a coherent presentation. Let's see. Appearance, medium, amber to very dark brown. Darker versions are more common. Clear if not opaque. Usually clear, although darker versions may be virtually opaque. Flavor, malty, spicy, fruity, and balanced. Allow for brewer creativity in meeting the themed objective. Warming or sweet spices common. Rich, sweet malty flavors are common and may include caramel, toasty, nutty, or chocolate flavor. May include dried fruit or dried fruit peel, such as raisins, plum, fig, cherry, orange peel, or lemon peel. May include distinctive sugar flavors like molasses, honey, brown sugar, that kind of thing. Bitterness and hop flavor are usually restrained to not interfere with specialty character. Usually finishes rather full and satisfying, often with a light alcohol. Let's see, and mouthfeel is just body as usually full or medium to full with a malty chewiness, moderately low to moderately high carbonation. It says age, character, allowable. So that's pretty cool. So there's a lot of things there that we can be looking for, and there seems to be some wiggle room in that. So that's what I always start with. And let's see. Sorry, I'm going to come back here to the live screen. Yeah, exactly. What Dr. Havenstein said is like a range of 7 to 50 in terms of the SRM, which is the color of the beer. So you can have really light, kind of like this light, even lighter if you want to, all the way up to like stout color, which is great. And I think that this category is fun because it's like there's so much room, wiggle room, and flexibility and freedom to create whatever kind of beer you want. So, um, so yeah. So whenever I think of starting a beer, um, I always think of like kind of like what Dr. Oppenstein said. Sometimes it's a story that creates the beer, kind of like with his buddy in Ukraine, get ready to go to the front lines in battle, which is insane, and that makes for an amazing story. But the other part of it is like, what's the experience that we're trying to shoot for here? Now, when I'm thinking about beer, one thing I wish I would have prepared for is actually I would love to put um, some like spruce tips or something inside this beer. I think it would be um, really fun, kind of like give it a winter wonderland sort of feel, like the Christmas tree taste. But um, you know, we don't have fresh spruce tips currently, and well, that's what you need is fresh spruce tips. So I guess old ones would work too, but I don't know. I think this time around I'm gonna just go without it. We're just gonna focus on some some warmness to it, and shoot for um, some sweetness that's kind of associated with holidays. You think of sweet, sugary treats and things like that, and then obviously some spices. So we're going to start with the grain bill first. And again, like um, when I'm thinking about this, I'm talking. My objective again is I want it to be uh, just a sipping beer that's comfortable, and again warming, and what I would associate with winter and seasonal. Um, so that's kind of what our goal is. Um, and then as I do the grain bill on here, I'll update it on Beersmith, and then you can see the change in color as we add certain grains. We'll go over some hops, and once we're done with that, then the stream will be done. So we're just going to go over all this stuff, and I'll just do just a very quick talk about grains, hops, yeast, that kind of thing, and then we'll go into deeper dives on that later on. Um, so grain bill, for those of you who don't know what a grain bill is, it's basically the list of grains and the amount of grains that you're going to be using in the beer. Okay, and if you're starting off with home brewing, you're probably not going to care too much about the grain bill because you're going to be using kits, and well, when you're using a kit, they have all the stuff there for you, and oftentimes you're going to start with like a liquid malt extract beer, maybe some grain that you're going to steep, but most of the time it's just going to be liquid malt extract. And then you go to the half mash where it's malt extract and some grain. And then if you're deciding to stay in the hobby a little bit longer, you're going to go to all grain, which is the best. Okay, so what's our grain bill going to look like? Okay, so when I'm thinking about grain bill, again, when you're thinking about the grains, there's two types of grains that you're going to be focusing on. You have your base malt. Sorry, the little man just woke up, so he's a little fussy, but he'll calm down, and he might make a little appearance here to add some excitement to the stream. But so you have your base malts and you have your specialty malt. Now, base malt is basically what's going to give you the most amount of um, color, sugar, kind of like the base flavor of the beer as well. And when I talk about giving you the most sugar, I'm also meaning that that's going to be more alcohol. So the majority of the alcohol and just the flavor profile is going to come from those base malts. And then we start to add complexity to it using specialty malts. Specialty malts are going to add are going to be more. They'll add some sugar content slash alcohol content, but their main point is to add to the complexity. So you're adding color, you're getting flavors like caramel, chocolate, um, nutty, coffee. What else am I thinking? Wheat, honey, um, that kind of thing. And some of the grains are also going to be adding certain characteristics to the beer. For example, we talked about doing wheat and carafoam grains to help with head retention. And then you have grains like oats, which help make your beer, like for an oatmeal stout, help make your beer smoother and kind of creamier on the mouthfeel. You could also get a little bit of that from corn as well. But I mean, there's so many things you can do. And you don't always have to use just grains. And in fact, I'm going to play around with not using grains at some point in time. I guess they're all considered grain. I'm thinking of like quinoa, uh, rye, which a lot of people make a rye PA or put rye in their beers. Dr. Oppenstein has a specialty beer that has some rye in it as well, and it's phenomenal. But rye is a great one. Rye also adds a little bit of spiciness to the recipe, and also can add a little bit of smoothness to the mouthfeel as well. Um, so that's what you get with your grains. Okay, so as you add the grain, it's going to increase the amount of potential sugars, sweetness, and complexity in your beer. So to start off with this one, I'm going to do I think I might just start off with like 8 pounds. I kind of want it to be light. Um, when I say light, I think I don't want it to be like overly chewy or overly sweet. Um, or like overly bready. I want it to be clean. I want it to be crisp, and I want it to be um, something that like is satisfying, and I know winter times more you're dealing with something sweet all the time, and you know but what I'm thinking I'm doing with this one as a base malt, I'm just going to stick with doing like a pilsner. So using pilsner malt, you're going to get a little bit of breadiness from it, but it's not as much breadiness as you're going to get um, from US two row or Maris Otter, or even like a Vienna malt. So there will be a little bit of breadiness and biscuitiness to it, but it's not going to be as overt as if you were to use those other grains. So we'll start that with our grain bill with 8 pounds of Pilsner malt. So that's where we're going to get most of our sugar, which is equivalent to alcohol. And that's where we're going to get our color too. And a lot of the times, this is going to give you an SRM of probably like 2 to 4, maybe. So it's going to be very, very light yellow in color. And in fact, like if you're going to make a Pilsner in general, like your grain bill is going to be Pilsner malt. You might put for a 5 gallon batch, you might put like half pound of carafoam or half pound of wheat to like add for head retention, and maybe a very, very slight amount of some other malt to add a little bit of complexity. But if you're doing a Pilsner, most of the time you're just doing Pilsner malt and then maybe a little bit of wheat and carafoam, and you call it good. But it's a great base malt. It's not overpowering, and it's quite nice. Uh, oh, that's a good question. Okay, so 8 pounds. I've never been asked that question, so let me think about how I'm going to answer that. Well, okay, so I'm making a 5 gallon batch, and so I've got a specific size container, and I think the most I've ever done was 15 pounds or 15 and a half pounds. I think that was for the Black Widow Stout I did in, I think it was August, or was it September? Anyways, I did it then. So part of it is me being limited on space, and the other part of it um, is just for the base malt. Okay, so I should break it into percentages here, and maybe this is not a great way of explaining it. So like when you're creating a recipe, okay. So let's just draw a glass real quick, okay. So we have a special beer, like whatever, that's the color of the beer that we're shooting for, and part of what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to, depending on the style of beer you're using, you're wanting to have a certain percentage of certain types of grains. And so for this beer, I'm wanting to have at least 80% of my grain bill be a base malt. Okay, so this is where I'm getting most of my sugar and alcohol from, and yeah, and then the rest of it, I want it to be the specialty, which I've got a couple of specialty grains that I want to use here, and I'll explain those as I put them up. So there's that. And then let's go over to the Beersmith real quick. um, because part of it is the percentage. I need to share my screen with y'all. So part of it is the percentage of grain for the recipe, and then the other part of it is just like the alcohol content in general. And so for this beer, I'm wanting it to be kind of like a mock lager. So since this recipe has a lot of freedom um, and wiggle room to kind of create whatever style beer that I want to with this, as long as it has that spiciness to it and kind of like that holiday feel. Um, it does basically say in the beer judge certification that talks about like when you turn it in, you say what the base style is. So I'd say that this one's probably going to be more of like a base style lager, kind of like a Märzen if I were to put it in there. But let me show you what we do. So like we're going to add a fermentable, and we'll, if I can write type Pilsner. Oh my heavens! All right, Pilsner, 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 Pilsner. I know my place has German Pilsner. I can't remember the company, but we'll do 8 pounds. Sometimes I'll tweak it a little bit, but as you can see, like I put 8 pounds of grain in there, and right now it's 100% of the recipe. And you can see over here on the right side we have that light gold color that I was talking about, and that pushes us into um, the green for this style of beer. Okay, winter seasonal, because we got a lot of wiggle room. And honestly, I could probably go in a little less of the Pilsner. Um, and again, sometimes you kind of have to tweak it based on what you're trying to shoot for, right? So, like, as I start putting grains in here, I might sit there and be like, well, you know what? 7 pounds might even be better. And part of that's just because part of that's coloring, part of that is alcohol, part of that is just wanting to make room for other flavors that are coming in. But if I were to hover over this and do details, it just says, let's see, German base for Pilsners and Bohemian lagers. Okay, it doesn't really say much. It gives just a very light, bready flavor to the beer. And again, that's kind of the base that we're shooting for with this whole thing. So um, I don't know if I have like a really good answer for like why 8 pounds, although I feel like whenever I start a beer, I always happen to use 8 pounds for base malt. And then I tweak it for later on. But again, I'm getting most of my alcohol and sugar from that base malt. So 8 pounds is a pretty good start. I don't know if that answers the question well enough. Um, and obviously, Dr. Hop, you might have a better way of putting that if you understand what I'm trying to say. Because I'm also interested what your answer would be on that. Sorry, I need to go over here. Okay, so there's that. Um, so again, I'm kind of looking for more of a lager as a base beer. Hence the reason why I'm doing a Pilsner. And so the other thing that I imagine with this beer, and I kind of want it to go along with the type of spices I'm thinking of using. Um, I think about like holidays and you kind of have like browns and reds and golds and kind of like copper colors, right? That's what I think about when I think about like beer color for a holiday. So yeah, so 8 pounds of Pilsner malt. We'll start there, and then we're gonna start going into our specialty malt pretty much right away. Um, so one of the things I thought about doing was I want to have some smokiness associated with this particular beer. Um, Again, I think the smokiness is going. I want it to be faint, but I want it to be present. Um, and I think that smokiness is going to somehow kind of help create that warm feeling that you get with the holiday beers. So with that, I'm going to add some smoked malt to it, and I think the last time I used smoked malt, it was quite pleasant. It was I think I used a half pound. It might have been a pound. I'll have to look it up. I was thinking of just doing a half pound though, and again I'm gonna have to look up my recipe before to see because that one it was pretty it was a pretty good balance. It was sweet and smoky. One of my neighbors was like, "It tastes like a manly man." I was like, "All right, I like that." So I think smokiness is a good balance with sweetness, and I want this one to just kind of like have that smokiness characteristic to kind of artificially create a warmth to it. So I'm gonna do 0.5 of smoked malt, and there's several types of malt. You could do peated smoked malt. You could do beechwood smoked malt. There's all smoked malt. There's all sorts of different ones. I think the last time I did it was beechwood smoked malt, and it was really really pleasant. Now with smoked malt, that's a challenge because it's like if you put too much, there's a lot of harshness and astringency to it, and it happens to have some like harsh tannins associated with it. So if you put too much in there, you end up running into an issue where um, like it tastes like you're licking an ashtray, and that's disgusting. And you don't want to have a disgusting beer because beer is meant to be drank. So drank. I don't know, whatever, something along that line. Um, and so let me show you this. We're gonna go next and add our other fermentable, and we're gonna do smoked malt, right? Um, let's see, cherry wood. See, there's all these options, right? You've got applewood, cherry wood, mesquite, and okay. So and there's peat smoked wood. Let's see if there's beech wood. So just because this grain is here, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm using this particular one from Poland. Just because my beer store does not have this one. It's got one. I think it's a local one. I just don't remember which one, or somewhat local. So this one I think is pretty close. So as you can see here in the description, it says smoked flavor and aroma based malt used in smoked ales, lagers, and wheat beers, primarily German styles. Okay, um, so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do half a pound. I think that should be a good start. It's not going to add much color because it's pretty much the same color. It was 2 SRM. Okay, so now we're going to start thinking about the colors that we want to add to it. So I want there to be a sweetness to it, and I want it to be copper colored. So I'm going to start thinking about malts like crystal malt, Vienna malt, um, and malts along that line. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of wheat because, again, part of the beer that I want it to have some head retention. Okay. So right now, you could still see we're in the green. Adding that half a pound of smoked malt didn't change the color. It added about, I don't know, 0.03 gravity to the beer. And right now, we're looking at a beer, if we just left it as is, at a beer that's 4.5%. I could probably increase that smoked malt if I want to, but again, I want my smoked malt to be uh, pretty light. I want the smokiness to be light but present. So then I think what I would really like to do is do a Vienna malt. Let's see if I can find a good Vienna malt. This one, Great Western Crisp. I know we have that one here. Is it Crisp or Simpson? Think it's crisp at our store. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to add about 2 pounds. And right now I'm throwing in 2 pounds. If Dr. Hoppenstein were to ask that question again, why 2 pounds? Part of it's because this malt is produced, it provides a light golden hue. So it's funny because the Vienna malt doesn't really add much color to it, right? So we're still showing a pretty dark yellow color, like a golden color. And so most of our color is going to be coming um, from like our crystal malts and maybe even like a Cara Red. So a Cara Red is a German style malt that adds kind of like a red hue to it. So that would be kind of where you're going to get your copper color. Um, and let's see if we do crystal malt. Let's see if they're crystal malt. So we're going to look at crystal malt, and I don't want it to be super strong. You'll see it'll say 60 Lovibond, 40 Lovibond. And for those of you who may not be used to beer in general, we use two terms for color. Part of it is Lovibond, and that's more of like you'll see the range of color be much greater. It'll go from like 10 lava bond up to like 560 lava bond. And then same with SRM. So they're kind of interchangeable, and it's just a color rating system. They're two different systems, but they're similar, right? So lava bond, and you'll see right here, it says 60 lava bond, and it'll say 60 SRM. So it sounds like, if I understand it correctly, there's two systems for measuring the color, and they're pretty much the same. But you'll hear me say SRM or lava bond, regardless of what I'm using. Just remember that those are color scales for beer. So a higher color like this one right here, the 110 SRM or 110 lava bond, that's going to cause there to be a much darker, it's going to be a much darker color. Like you get into black patent malts or pale chocolate malts, you're getting into the 460 and 560 range. So it's very, very dark. It's going to cause your beer to become quite dark really quickly. And because they are so dark, and part of that darkness comes from the kiln and from actually roasting it, those darker beers, just think about like drinking a light roast coffee versus a dark roast coffee. Light roast coffee is floral, it's citrusy, it's maybe a little bit acidic, but it's bright, versus a dark roast, like you get like a French roast and it feels like you're drinking an ashtray. So we don't want too much of those darker colored beers or darker colored grains, because it's going to start adding astringency and odd tannins to the beer and make it unpleasant and overpowering. So I'm going to shoot for like a 40 lava bond. So it adds body, character, or color, and improves head retention. So immediately, just with 1 pound, look at the color of our beer. Okay, it immediately turned to like a dark amber color, which is great. And I'm trying to think here. I don't know if I want to do the Vienna malt. I feel like it's just wasting space, and it's making more complexity than I want. So I'm gonna get rid of that. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, Mr. Man. Okay, we have a special guest. Hold on. Gotta bring the special guest here. Right here. Mr. Man. It's Brew Baby. Brew Baby. Who is that? We see that little guy on there? That's you. Anyways, he just woke up, so I need to speed this thing up so I can.
Have to leave in
10 minutes. Okay.
have to eat food.
Okay, eat food.
Okay.
Start cooking it. We're gonna have a very busy background, so just be ready for that. I'll try and give you guys over here. And we now have a guest here because she's got a doctor's appointment. So we're just gonna have a new assistant. And I'll try and speed this up because I know it's kind of going a little long. Okay. Let's go back to screen capture real fast. So I got rid of the Vienna malt just because I think it's adding too much. I don't want it to be too complex. And I could change this around to maybe do 1.5. Because I'm wanting it to kind of get to that darker kind of caramel color. And I think what I'll add is like maybe a Cara red. Because I want there to be a little bit of redness to it. Cara red. There it is, Weyermann. And we'll add not a large amount to start out. Because again, I'm kind of wanting there to be a certain color that is associated with it. So we're starting to get to that kind of like brass copper color. So this is where I kind of play around with different measurements to see if I can get the color I want. Try to do 1 pound. Okay, kind of like that. Maybe 1.25. And always start with small amounts first. That could be pretty good. That looks pretty good. So you could see that right here I've got crystal malt, and then I got Cara red. The crystal malt also adds, when it talks about body, it's adding some sweetness to it and some carameliness to it. And with our Cara red, it's adding that reddish hue to it, but it also is similar to like a medium crystal malt, like maybe a 60 lava bond. But the 60 lava bond does not necessarily add that red hue to it. And I'm wanting that red hue in there. So this is kind of what I'm shooting for right now. As you can see, we're looking for a gravity reading of 1.059, which gives us about close to 6% alcohol, which is pretty good. And then I think what I said, and I should be going to the board here in a second, I wanted the white wheat malt. White wheat, can I spell it? White wheat malt. Okay, and I'm just gonna do half a pound of that. I don't need a whole lot in there for a 5-gallon batch for head retention. It's not really gonna add a whole lot. It's increased the gravity a little bit. It's increased the alcohol a little bit, but I'm only putting it in there more for like head retention, and we get a little bit of head retention from that crystal malt and our Cara Red as well. But that's what I'm kind of shooting at. So let's, oops, sorry, I'm trying to do, oh my heavens. That's okay. You're doing great. Is he going to review the beer too? I know, right? He should review the beer. All right. So let's come back over here to discuss our beer so we can look at our grain bill. Okay, we did, what was it? One, and I'm not putting this necessarily in any particular order. Normally, like when I do it, I like to do the largest amount to the lowest amount just so I can see, like just keep it organized. But today I'm not going to be doing that. So you're looking at this. He's learning how to brew beer at a very young age. He's a future brewer, I'm sure of it. But he can be whatever he wants. Anyway, so 1.5 pounds. We did. Was that the? Gosh, I don't remember all of a sudden. Hold on one second. I am ready to hear your thoughts on base malt. 1.5 crystal malt, and then it was 1.25 for the Cara Red. Okay, cool. Okay. All right. So we did the crystal, and it was 40 Lavabond, and then we did 1.25 pounds. Sorry, buddy. 1.25 pounds of Cara Red. That's what it was. And that was, I believe that was 24 Lavabond. So it's pretty low, but again, we're just putting that in there more for our red. And these two are pretty similar anyways. And then 0.5 pounds. Yeah, you want to say something? White wheat malt. Okay, and that's more for head retention. This is for red, copper. And this is for, the crystal is for sweetness. Caramel, sure. I'll take them when you're ready. Sweetness, caramel, and just also some color. And it also said that it helps with head retention as well. Our smoked malt is just a slight smokiness. Make it warming and comfortable, but not overpowering. And then our Pilsner is our base malt, which is, so most of our sugars, which is alcohol, and then also just kind of like a bready base and golden color. It's where we're getting most of our, it's where we're getting kind of that base color from, right? Now, sometimes, and it just depends on the style of beer that you're doing. This is a pretty complex grain bill. I mean, you start getting into, like I told you how like Pilsner beers are so simple. It's either one grain or it could be multiple grains. Like wheat added to it to, add for head retention, but otherwise you're not going to have a whole lot more. But once you start getting into things like beers like stouts or Märzens or things like that, I think and this is me just going through I'm learning how to brew still. I mean, I've been brewing for like 3 or 4 years, and I feel like I'm getting a pretty good handle on my recipes. But the trick is trying to keep it as simple as possible. And so when you start adding lots of grains, and I think Dr. Appelstein would agree with me on this, is like when you start adding a lot of grains, especially on a pro brewer level, then you have to have a lot more of these grains available. So I have heard recommendations of, you know, doing no more than like 3 grains, and it doesn't really matter. You could do however much you want in there, but like doing like 3 grain types in a beer to simplify it, right? Um, and so you can make it as complex as you want, and you can make it as simple as you want. And honestly, I could probably get rid of the crystal malt and just keep it with Cara Red and just add a little bit more, and it might end up being more red in color and less coppery. Um, I don't know why I want the copper, and I might change it. You know, between now, me going through all of this, and then actually going to brew day might change a little bit. And it's totally fine to change it up and experiment, right? And take copious amounts of notes. As I'm brewing this, I might sit there and when I'm done with the beer, I'm gonna be like, it's too sweet, um, or maybe too smoky, or not enough hop, or maybe there wasn't enough head, and maybe I just need to add a little bit more wheat malt or carafoam to the beer, that kind of thing. So you can always play around with it. But again, if you're wanting the simplicity, you could also just break these two down into one grain style, and you'll still get sweetness, you'll still get caramel, and you'll get some color, but it might not be the color you're shooting for. So that's why making it a little bit more complex is good. Anyways, I see Dr. Hoppenstein has said some stuff that I think we should share because he's good. Um, just needed to brew math a bit. I think your recipe is awesome. Your explanation is great. I think you got a killer bill there. Oh, thanks, man. Um, let's see. Do you find that wheat malt is better or worse than Carapils or Carafoam for hypertension? Okay, I'll get back to that question here. Let me just read the last thing. Oh, I guess actually Dr. Appelstein answered it. There is more protein in wheat than barley, so wheat traditionally is a solid option for hypertension, but the Carapils and Carafoam are solid options. Cool. Thanks for answering that. Yeah, and I would agree 100%. And I'm, you know what, Dr. Appelstein's a pro brewer, so I really love that you're part of this, Dr. Hop, because um, I feel like there's so much that we can all learn from you. And just so you all are aware, if I'm doing a beer and I'm like, I am kind of stuck somewhere, I immediately go to Dr. Hoppenstein and be like, bro, how do I fix this? Or, bro, how do I get these certain flavors? So my coffee beer, which is one of the snow globes you're getting, Dr. Hoppenstein, um, and um, and uh, my Arrakis ale were beers that he helped me kind of like work on to get the flavor I wanted. So that was super helpful. So ask all the questions to him. And Bentorius, I'm glad you're here too because based on what I've seen on your channel, like you have a lot of you have a lot of insight on beer too, and it's really fun to hear your beer reviews as well. And I think it's pretty valuable. And for I'd always say like uh, definitely if you haven't been to Bentorius's channel, check it out. He does beer reviews, way more beer reviews than I do, and um, I love it. I love it, and I want to do more beer reviews as well at some point in time. But for now, um, I think my thing is just uh, learning and teaching what I learn. So I'm going to be doing some deep dives on like hops and yeast and water chemistry and malt also at some point in time. And there'll be a handful of things um, that I'll do live stream, and then there'll be a handful of content that I'm going to like pre-record and post on YouTube. So definitely check those out if you're interested. There's a lot of great content out there. So I'm just going to be one face in the many faces that are out there, and I'm just going to put my own spin on it. So I would love the support there as well. And again, go support Dr. Oppenstein. Go support Bentorius if you like beer. If you're new to the channel here, I would love a follow as well. It's always great. And that's the great thing about beer and brewing and the craft beer industry in general, and is just the community that it creates. It's like we get to come together because to me, and I would agree, I would say that Dr. Oppenstein and Bentorius would probably agree with me based on what I know about them, is beer is art. Like, yeah, you could drink it, get drunk, but might as well just do that with like Bud Light and just drink a crap ton and just use crappy beer. because craft beer, you can do it very easily. Because think of this wheat wine. If I had two of those, I'd be toasted by the end of this stream, because I haven't had lunch. Um, but um, yeah, it's it's an art, and it's fun to share that with people and creating community. So that's what I'm all about. I know Dr. Hoppenstein's for sure about that, and yeah, the art of beer is a real thing. So, anyways, okay, so quick, and you're gonna have to forgive me. Brubella has to go to an appointment, and so I'll have the baby with me. So I might try and speed things up a little bit to help out with that. Okay, all right. So next is hops. For those of you who don't know much about hops, hops is what is one of those ingredients that makes beer beer, right? You need water, yeast, grains, malted grains, um, and other grains too, and hops. Okay, so those are all the things that you need in a beer, and hops adds bitterness and aroma and flavor. Okay, those are the main reasons. So bitterness is the number one thing that hops adds, and then you have flavor and aroma, and that all is dependent on what beer you're making. So, for example, like if you're making an IPA, you're going to use hops for bitterness, and you're going to amp up the hops because you want it bitter, and you're going to add special hops that are going to add specific aromas to it: floral, citrus, grapefruit, pineapple, whatever. You're going to add those in there as well, and the hops all the hops are so complex, and when I do my deep dive on it, like you'll understand why. Um, but all of these, the for bitterness, flavor, and aroma, you have to add hops at different times in the boil. So for bitterness, you're going to add it earlier on in the boil, um, and then for flavor and aroma, for flavor, you're going to be adding it between like 20 and 15 minutes left of the boil, maybe even up to 10, or down to 10, I should say. And then aroma is anything like after 10 minutes. Like usually it's like 5 minutes with the rest of the boil to knockout, which is when we turn the fire off, start chilling the beer. Okay, awesome, dude. Um, yeah, dude. Thanks for jumping on. Thanks for your insight. Love having you here, Dr. Oppenstein. That's awesome. Yeah, the Chinook. Actually, that's really great because the Chinook is nice. Chinook is great for bitterness. And, in terms of what I'm shooting for here, I don't necessarily want a whole lot of flavor and aroma. Um, so yeah, actually Chinook would be great. And the funniest thing, it's a high alpha acid, so um, it's going to offer a lot more bitterness for this beer. And I'm thinking for this particular one, just because I want there to be the sweetness and the smokiness to kind of be prevalent, I think the amount of bitterness I need won't be a whole lot. So I might not even need a whole ounce of Chinook. But that's I like that actually. Chinook is a great one. So let's take a look at that and read through what that looks like for us. Um, so let's pull this out. So now we add our hops, and I'll just look Chinook. Chinook. So here we go, Chinook. So it's 13% alpha acid, which it falls actually 1 ounce would be perfect. So it's used for ales, porters, and stouts. Heavy and spicy aroma, and we can look at the details on this one. Yeah, I guess heavy and spicy aroma is quite pleasant. Because I mean we're gonna add some spices to this anyways, and so like the spiciness from the hop, and this hop, if you've never used it before, it's quite potent, but I love it because it's also uh, a clean hop. It's not like gosh, like tomahawk or um, what are the other ones that are really high? And let me think of this real fast. Origin United States. Okay, here we go. United Kingdom. Where's the U.S.? Okay, U.S. So yeah, so things that I think about, like I'm thinking like Centennial hop. Centennial hop's a great one as well. But I feel like the Chinook is just really great for. It's just a clean hop. Um, and it, it's most, I mean, it's clean in terms of like what you're using it for bitterness, right? You could use it for other things as well, but it's not necessarily a hop that you'd use so much for flavor and aroma. This is more of like a bittering hop. Whereas like Centennial or Galena or Citrus or Citra hops, um, Tomahawk, Idaho 7, like all of these ones, um, I guess you could say they're all clean, but this one I just really like because it is very pleasant and clean and simple. So I like that. That was a good. I like that. That's a really good one, actually, Ventorius. I appreciate that. Um, Sometimes what I'll do is I've got a bunch of hops still in my um, fridge. So sometimes what I like to do is use the hops that I already have, but I don't want too much of the flavoring from the hops that I do have. And yeah, so I think a Chinook would be really great. I think just doing 1 ounce looks like it adds 41 IBUs. I realize that you guys aren't even looking at me. Um, so yeah, I mean that's some good stuff. I've used some of the base rye lager to eventually accommodate for spruce tips additionally. Yeah, I mean yeah, that's actually really kind of a fun way. Sorry, I just realized that's a fun use for it as well. Have you? I'm curious. Have you ever done a spruce tip beer? I've been wanting to do a spruce tip beer for a while. It's 2:30. Okay. Um, okay. Okay.
We need a vacuum.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do it. Um, okay. So we're gonna do Chinook. I like that, and I appreciate that tip too because it's great. So 13% alpha acid, and for those of you, so alpha acid is a particular acid that's like the most prevalent acid in a hop. And when I'm looking at a, a particular hop that I want to use and a style of bitterness as well, um, when you're looking at a higher alpha acid, the higher the alpha acid, the more bitterness that it's going to provide. And that bitterness comes through a process called isomerization, which happens during the boil. During the boil, the alpha acid transforms into an iso alpha acid, and that's where we get our bitterness from. But this one is great. You add 1 ounce of Chinook, we're going to get a nice clean bitterness, and it's not going to be overpowering for what we're doing here. And again, for this particular beer, I'm not looking for hop aroma or flavor at all. So bitterness is all I'm shooting for because I don't want it to be something that overpowers the flavors and the smokiness I'm shooting for. We'll see ya. Okay, so there's your hops and then yeast. So the yeast I'm going to choose for this one, I haven't chosen yet, but yeast is an important factor, okay? Because yeast happens to give special characteristics and um, profiles, uh, flavors, all that sort of thing. And it also depends on like how you're going to ferment. So you can have a lager yeast or you can have an ale yeast. Lager yeasts sometimes take a little bit longer just because you're fermenting at a cooler temperature, whereas ale yeasts you're fermenting at a warmer temperature, and they go a little bit faster because it's warmer temperature. But also, I mean, you could still ferment a lager fairly quickly, a week or two, even with those yeasts. But the big thing you got to watch out for is temperature control. If you can't control the temperature of your beer, then you need to find or yeah, control the temperature of your fermentation. Then you need to find a yeast that's pretty flexible. So for this one, when I'm imagining this beer, I want it to be really clean and kind of crisp, almost dry. But then if I'm shooting for something that's somewhat sweet, I might want something that's kind of like a medium body beer. But I still want it to be kind of crisp and clean to the point where you can pick out the different flavors that I'm using. So with that in mind, crisp and clean, those are two characteristics that I want, and the yeast or the type of yeast that I use will be dependent on this, right? Like if I want these characteristics from that yeast, I need to find a yeast that'll give me those characteristics. Oftentimes, uh, the yeast that will give us these sorts of characteristics are lager yeasts. Lager yeasts create really clean, good beers, but that also is dependent on what we do with our grain bill during our mash. Okay, so during our mash, that's going to determine whether it's going to be full body, medium body, or light body. So full body is really sweet and kind of hefty mouthfeel. Medium body is a little clean, but it's a little sweet and a little, I don't know what you call sweetness. Dry, not necessarily dry, but chewy, I guess. Uh, Kind of a velvety mouthfeel, kind of like what we were looking for with this wheat wine. Um, and and then a low body would be something that you get with like a pilsner, something that's very clean, very dry, very crisp, that kind of thing. So even though I don't really want to be doing a lager right now, I'm going to find a yeast that I did use a while ago, and I was thinking of looking this one up, but it gave me a clean, crisp beer, and it worked really well because I still was able to maintain the sweetness of my beer. I think it was like an English ale yeast from Wyeast, and it was able to maintain the sweetness and still have a clean, crisp character. And that's really what I really want to have in this. And it was still an ale yeast. And that's what I'm going to be shooting for because right now it's really cold outside. So my fridge that I normally use to maintain temperature control for my lagers, it's just too cold outside. And inside it's hard to maintain cooler temperature for lager fermentation. And so I can maintain between 60 and 72 degrees consistently inside my house. So I'm going to be finding a yeast that will give that to me. So that's what we're looking for with that yeast. And I see Ventorius, you put some stuff on here. Let me get back to it because I want to read it. Working off that rye lager, yeah. Do you have preference? That's a good question. I have only done dry yeast for ciders. I prefer liquid yeast right now for the beers that I do. And the big reason why is I make yeast starters. So I've used White Labs. I think I used Omega yeast once, Wyeast. Imperial yeast is one of my favorites. Um, Wyeast is really good too, though, because they have a lot of options. But I always get the liquid one. And the reason I do the liquid one is because I also do yeast starter. But for those of you who are out there, you can do a yeast starter with dry as well. But I always, always, always do a yeast starter, which helps to uh, it helps to cause the fermentation to start sooner and earlier. It also causes the fermentation to be a lot more efficient. And I like the liquid yeast because it's one of those things where it's like I don't have to mix it in, you know, because I've had a couple of times where I've totally forgot to do a yeast starter, or I um, didn't have time to do a yeast starter, something along that line, and um, I don't know. I just the times that I have used the dry yeast, it floats on top for a while, and that to me it's annoying, and it just I don't know. I don't know. That's just my own personal opinion, but they work just as good. Um, oh, do you not have access to Imperial yeast up there? Is that just do they just not sell it up there, or I ship it? I guess is a better way of putting it. Do you at least get White Labs, Omega, and Wyeast? Because they're good enough. Oh, that's a bummer. Well, um, man, that is a bummer. I really like Imperial yeast, and I like it because they give packets with 200 billion cells. So already, if you don't have a yeast starter, you could just plop those into your beer, and I mean, you're gonna get a good fermentation. And so even I do a yeast starter with those, and so I just double that. So 300 billion to 400 billion yeast cells, and I mean, you're getting a really quick, clean, efficient fermentation from those, and I really like that. Wyeast is great also. I don't really like the smack packs as much because I suck at those because you have to like find the little pack with the yeast and you got to smack it in the corner. And that can be quite challenging. I'm getting better over time by using it, but anyways, I'm going to be using a Wyeast for this one. I know that for a fact, because I know the yeast that I want. I can't remember the name, but I know what I want to use, and I'll show you that here in a second. Actually, is it on my computer? I don't think it is. It might be on my phone. Let's take a look. I'm gonna come over here. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you guys have Y yeast and White Lab. So let's come over here. I'm going to check out one of my earlier beers that I did for one of my earliest followers. I just don't remember if I did it on here. I did not. Okay. Okay, interesting. How you doing over there, little buddy? Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I have Beersmith on my phone. Um, again, my little man's gonna be coming back on because he'll probably get, I don't know, a little fussy. He's doing good for right now, but anyways, I've got Beersmith on my phone, which is great because I don't always carry my laptop around. And if I get really inspired about a beer or I go to a brewery and I'm trying a beer and I'm like, wow, this is phenomenal, I take notes on my notes app, and then I find I find or I start working on the beer recipe on this app, which is amazing. Okay, what was it? I'm gonna try and find it real fast because the messy pig. That's what it was. Okay. All right. Messy pig is what I called it. Wow, I made it really bitter, which is kind of interesting. I did use Idaho 7 and East Kent Golding. Okay, so I used Y Yeast Labs 1098, which is a British ale yeast. So that's what we're gonna. I think that's what we're gonna do because I know what to expect with that one. I know, Betty. I've got a headache also, so I'm gonna try and finish this up soon. Uh, British ale yeast. Which one? 1098. Okay. Y yeast Labs. 1098 right there. British ale yeast. So if I click on this, you can see what it is. It's all British ales, pales, bitters, English strong ale. Okay, but here are the notes: fruity, tart, dry, crisp finish, very well balanced. This is why I really like this. And what I did was I used this on a beer that was meant to be a lager, and I was having issues with lagers, so I called it an almost lager. And I chose this yeast because it gave me almost that artificial lager feel: crisp, clean, dry finish, and that's what I wanted. But it worked really well because it was a medium body beer, so it was very sweet at the same time. It was just really pleasant. So I'm going to use that one in particular. Um, and I don't remember if it showed us this. Yeah, so the min temperature is 64 and max temperature 72. Easily doable for me, which is great. And then we have things like medium flocculation, alcohol tolerance. We're not going to do 9% beer, so it doesn't really matter. Medium flocculation basically is during fermentation, you have the boil, right? Or not the boil, but the trube at the top. That's not even the right word. It's kreuzen. Kid screaming in the background, headache. Just bear with me. Um, but it's called the kreuzen. So when the yeast is going to town, it's pooping out alcohol and CO2. It's creating a bunch of bubbles on top, and it's also got a bunch of like dead yeast bodies on top, which is part of the kreuzen. And then at the end of fermentation, that all falls out. So that's called flocculation. That's the ability for the residual yeast and the kreuzen to drop out of the beer and clean the beer. So medium flocculation means that it's going to be a fairly clean beer at the end of fermentation, which is great. Okay, my last bit, and then we'll end it. And it's so much fun. I'm glad you guys are all here. This makes everything very enjoyable for me. All right, buddy, I'm almost done. Oh, he's trying to sit up. Ah, the game is changing. He's 5 months, almost 6 months, and he's starting to sit up and roll and all the fun stuff. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do was talk about adjuncts. Okay, um, and adjuncts are anything that you add to a beer that is not grain or hop or yeast. It's just extra things, and it could be like sugars, like turbinado sugar, maple syrup, brown sugar, molasses, that kind of thing. It could be fruit. It could be spices. So we're going to be going over spices today. One thing I will add to this as well, right off the bat, I don't even need to think about it, is a Werflock tablet. And a Werflock tablet is considered a fining um, addition, and that's just going to help clarify the beer. So hop particles, grain proteins, yeast particles, all that stuff, it's all going to kind of clarify things. And this is more for boiling, during the boiling process, okay? But there's a little bit that it can do during fermentation as well, but this is more during boil. So it's collecting all the particulate that happens during boiling. So those proteins and the grain particles and the hop particles, even the spices that you use, it all kind of collects it into like a gelatinous blob, and it falls out, and it cleans your beer and makes it nice and clear and clean. But what we're going to do, since it's a holiday beer, is I want to do spices. So, and I'm not going to do the exact same spices that I used for the pumpkin oatmeal stout, just because I don't want it to be too similar. But the spices that I pulled off the shelf were nutmeg, ground nutmeg, ground cinnamon, Saigon cinnamon at that, allspice, and clove. And I kind of already have an idea of which ones I want to use, but I kind of want to do like a smell test. So that's how I think about it. It's like, what do I want to smell in my beer, and what do I want to taste in my beer? So I think for sure what I want is cinnamon. And Bentorius, I see that you said something. Do you usually adjust your water? I have. So normally I don't. Um, but I will for my pilsners. So my German pilsners, I will. And also, I want to do more with water chemistry, because you can have a lot more control over the flavor of your beer and have certain things pop out. So like some additions are going to have your beer be more hoppy. And hi, I'm going to go get them real fast. So some of the additions to your water might make a beer more, hi, oh, what are you doing over here? More hoppy. Here, I'm gonna come pick you up. Here, let go, let go, let go. It's hard having a baby sometimes, but it's so much fun. Tell you what. All right. Um, yeah, so um, yeah, just depends. But I've had a lot of success with my pilsners. Um, with the water chemistry, that I want to do more with it, because there's a few uh, programs out there that you can find that are free resources that help you with water chemistry for specific beers. And there's actually uh, something called Beer Dust that I found, where somebody gave out little packets of, so you can get like an amber packet or an IPA packet. It had all the water findings for like a 5-gallon batch, and you could just throw that in there for yourself. Beersmith is a great tool as well, so you can actually put the water profile target that you're shooting for in Beersmith, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to add into the water to make it meet that profile, which is great. So very good question. And I mean, I honestly highly recommend it, but the reason I don't do it as much is because I have to go get either distilled water or reverse osmosis water, and then so you're starting off with uh, not a lot in there, and you just have to add it all. And it's just easier to either use tap water, or I go to a well mostly for my beers, which is an artesian well. So it's very heavy on minerals, and it makes really good ales, and that's mostly what I do anyways. So if I'm not doing an ale and I'm doing a lager, then I might do water chemistry. So anyways, I like to have certain smells in my beer, so I just pulled these out just to actually smell it. So I definitely want cinnamon in it, because cinnamon's freaking amazing. And the other one that I was thinking of is clove, and I was thinking of doing like a teaspoon and a half of cinnamon and maybe like a half teaspoon of clove, because man, that's pretty strong. Clove's a pretty strong spice, and I don't think you need to add a whole lot in it to get the flavor that you want. And I think those two go really well together. What I don't know is allspice. don't know if I really like the allspice. And let's find out nutmeg. Nutmeg would be good, but I don't think that's really pulling out the warm, fuzzy holiday feelings to me. So I don't know. Hey, Dr. Appenstein, you're back. But try fenugreek. Super cool and can give. Oh, interesting. Go to length and send out a water sample to a water treatment plant to have it assessed. Then plug it in your default water. Oh, that's a great idea. I should do that. Yeah, clove is a pretty strong flavor for sure. And so like I have it ground. Um, and so with the ground clove, I'd probably do like a half teaspoon maybe because even like 1 teaspoon I think might be too much. But yeah, the fenugreek would be interesting. So I think I'm just going to do that. I'm going to write this down and then I'm going to end this because it's a little challenging with a little man who needs attention. But I appreciate your all's patience with this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 0.5 ounces, or not ounces, teaspoons of cinnamon. And then I'm going to do fenugreek. I'm going to write it down and actually explore that one and see what it smells like, because I might actually change this up. So just because I'm doing this on a live stream with y'all doesn't necessarily mean that it's the final product, because I sit here and I think about it a little bit afterwards and try and figure out, like, is this something that I really want to do? Are these the flavors I really want? And then I'll give the update. So I'll do 0.5 teaspoon of clove. And this is ground. And I'll do it at 5 minutes because it seems to work really well at 5 minutes. That was a tip from Dr. Hoppenstein. And ground is also a good option because, again, tip from Dr. Hoppenstein is it allows there to be more surface area, which causes the flavor to be more prevalent, which is great. Yeah, that's right. Dad, streamer, and body. That's right. Anyways, so that's that. That's a beer recipe. So this is our winter seasonal beer. We're basically kind of creating a Märzen ale. It's a fake. It's not a lager. It'll be a fake lager or a lager look-alike imitation. We're wanting to have it be smoky and sweet and copper in color. We want it to be clean, crisp but sweet, and also a little dry. We're gonna have some cinnamon and clove in it, maybe even fenugreek. We'll see. And then we're gonna use some Chinook to give us a pretty nice balance of bitterness, but cleanness also for the beer. And I think overall it's gonna be really good. But anyways, so that's an idea of what a beer recipe build looks like. And I will be planning on doing more of these builds for each different style of beer that I do, because there's going to be some differences in each one. So anyways, that's all I got for y'all. Appreciate y'all being here and being patient with the little man and any technical difficulties I might have had. But you guys have been great. Bentorius, it's great to have you as part of the community. It's fun to have you here, and it's always good to have people who really love going deep on beer and nerding out. So it's good. So y'all give a follow to Dr. Hoppenstein and Bentorius. Even Rob with 2Bs. Rob with 2Bs is awesome. If you like baking and flavor, man, it'd be fun to have one of your baked goods and try and do a beer that would pair well with one of your baked goods. Maybe one day we'll have to make something happen like that. Anyways, you guys are awesome. Thanks so much for being here. Y'all go grab a beer and enjoy it. And remember to be adventurous, stay thirsty, speak easy. You guys are amazing. Bye. We'll see you on, I don't know, 28th, 29th, one of those days for the brew day. And we're going to make it happen. It's going to be really good. All right. See y'all. Bye.